Racist hotel rejects Big Shaq. The next day, he returns as the owner. On a cool autumn evening, the Royal Beacon Hotel's lobby gleamed with polished marble floors and soft lighting. Guests in tailored suits and designer dresses glided past, exchanging quiet greetings. Behind the front desk, Marissa, a young receptionist, prided herself on managing the hotel's elite ambiance. She believed she could spot the right sort of clientele from a distance. As the clock approached midnight, a tall, broad-shouldered black man stepped inside, wearing a simple hoodie and jeans. His face was friendly but weary, as if he'd come from a long journey. He approached the front desk. Marissa's smile tightened, turning polite but guarded. She sized him up, noting his casual clothes. This wasn't how their usual guests dressed. "Good evening," he said calmly, his voice deep and warm. "I'd like a room for the night." He leaned in slightly, offering a credit card. He stood well over 6 feet tall with a distinctive presence, but Marissa focused on what she considered the wrong kind of look. Marissa glanced at the empty reservations list. There were rooms available, plenty in fact. But something about him made her uneasy. He didn't fit her idea of an upscale guest. Ignoring the logic, she forced a thin smile. "I'm sorry, we're fully booked," she lied. The man's brow furrowed. He looked around. The lobby was quiet. Vacant tables and chairs suggested low occupancy. "Are you certain?" he asked softly. "I'm happy to pay any rate." Marissa folded her arms. "I'm sorry, sir, there's nothing I can do. Perhaps you could try elsewhere." At that moment, a well-dressed couple entered. Marissa's demeanor changed instantly, a genuine smile, a warm greeting. Within minutes, she produced a room key for them with no hesitation. The tall man watched, disappointment flickering in his eyes. He realized this was no misunderstanding. This was bias, plain and simple. He nodded to himself, controlling a surge of anger. "Thank you," he said quietly, turning to leave. Outside, the crisp air stung his cheeks. He took a deep breath. He wasn't just any traveler turned away. He was Shaquille Big Shaq O'Neal, a legendary basketball figure whose name was known worldwide. He was also a successful entrepreneur who had quietly acquired properties and businesses. The Royal Beacon Hotel had been on his radar for months. Tonight's encounter sealed his decision. That night, Shaq made calls. He spoke to his financial advisor and his legal team. The hotel's parent company had been struggling, and Shaq had considered investing. Now he resolved to buy it outright. By morning, he would finalize the deal. As dawn broke, Shaq's team confirmed the purchase. He now owned the Royal Beacon Hotel. He spent the morning reviewing staff files and policies. Sipping coffee in a quiet cafe, he thought about the night before. The rejection, the dismissive tone. He had endured prejudice before, but this time, he held the power to make it right. Around midday, Shaq pulled up to the hotel once again. This time he wore a tailored suit. His confident stride and imposing height turned heads. Inside, staff bustled as usual, but tension flickered as they recognized him from last night, though many didn't know the full story. Marissa spotted him and froze. She remembered refusing him. She hadn't expected to see him again. He looked different, more commanding, his attire immaculate. Her heart thumped nervously as he approached the desk. She forced a smile. "Good afternoon, sir. How can I help you?" Shaq regarded her calmly, quiet strength in his gaze. "I'm here to introduce myself," he said, his voice steady but kind. "My name is Shaquille O'Neal, and as of this morning, I'm the new owner of the Royal Beacon Hotel." A hush fell over the lobby. Marissa's face went pale, her eyes widening in shock. She stammered, You, the owner?" The other staff and a few guests looked on, curious and confused. Shaq nodded. "Yes, I've completed the acquisition of this hotel. Last night I tried to check in, but you said there were no rooms, even though there were." He let that sink in, his tone never rising, never turning harsh. "I want to know why." Marissa's mind raced. She had no excuse that wouldn't reveal her bias. Her cheeks burned. I apologize," she managed weakly. "I thought we were fully booked." Shaq didn't flinch. "I watched you give a room to a couple right after me. Don't pretend you didn't," he said, his words calm but unyielding. Marissa's lips trembled. She knew lying would only dig her a deeper grave. The hotel manager, Joel, emerged from the back office. He had heard rumors all morning about a sudden takeover, but this confrontation caught him off guard. "Mr. O'Neill," he said, his voice oily with attempted charm, "I'm sure there's a misunderstanding. We didn't know it was you." Shaq turned his gaze to Joel. "So, if you knew who I was, you would have treated me differently?" he asked quietly. That's the problem right there. You judge people on appearances and perceived status, not on their worth as human beings." Joel swallowed, struggling for words. He had run this hotel with a certain clientele in mind. Now he realized how precarious his position was. Shaq took a breath, addressing the entire lobby. "I won't stand for discrimination in my hotel. Every guest deserves respect, no matter their color, clothing, or background." He met Marissa's eyes. "Last night you refused me service. This morning I come as owner, not to punish blindly, but to set things right." Marissa's knees felt weak. She expected instant dismissal. Instead, Shaq offered an unexpected path. "I believe in second chances," he said. "If you're willing to learn to treat everyone fairly, you can stay. But if not, this isn't the place for you." Tears pricked Marissa's eyes. She managed a nod. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Voice cracking, she said, "I'll change." Shaq nodded, satisfied for now. He turned to Joel. "As for the management, I'll be making changes. You'll undergo training. Everyone will on bias and customer relations. This hotel will be a symbol of inclusivity, not exclusion." Joel nodded vigorously, relieved to still have a job. The staff watched, some with admiration, others with shame. The guests who witnessed this felt a sense of justice in the air. That afternoon, Shaq convened a staff meeting in a conference room overlooking the city. He spoke of his vision. A hotel where every guest felt welcome, where service was genuine, not conditional on stereotypes. He outlined plans for training sessions, revised policies, and community outreach. "My success in basketball taught me teamwork, humility, and fairness," he said. "We'll apply those values here." The employees listened intently. Some looked relieved. Those who'd been uncomfortable with the old biases were grateful for the change to align with a better standard. Others looked nervous, uncertain how to adapt. But Shaq's calm authority made it clear. This was the new normal. Over the next weeks, changes took place swiftly. The lobby's subtle, elitist branding softened, promoting a warm, inclusive atmosphere. Training sessions, led by professionals in diversity and hospitality, challenged staff to reflect on their attitudes. Marissa attended every session diligently, determined to atone for her misjudgment. She learned about unconscious bias, the importance of equality, and how to treat each guest with genuine warmth. Outside, word spread that Big Shaq owned the Royal Beacon Hotel, not as a cheap publicity stunt, but as a move to transform it. Journalists tried to interview him, but he kept it low-key. He wanted deeds, not headlines, to speak for him. New guests arrived. Some curious, some longtime admirers of Big Shaq's basketball legacy. More importantly, travelers of all backgrounds started to feel comfortable booking a room. The staff greeted them with genuine smiles, no longer scanning their outfits or questioning their worth. The transformation was not just cosmetic, it was cultural. One late afternoon, Shaq stood in the lobby, watching Marissa check in a family. The parents were casually dressed, the children excited and giggling. Marissa welcomed them graciously, no hint of hesitation. After they left for the elevator, Shaq approached her. She turned, her smile now free of the old tension. "Mr. O'Neill," she said warmly, "I just wanted to say thank you for giving me a second chance. I see things differently now." Shaq nodded, resting a large hand gently on the counter. "I knew you could learn," he replied. "That's what this place is about now. Learning, growing, treating people right." Marissa's eyes shone with sincere gratitude. The painful memory of her old prejudice had become a lesson, making her a better person and employee. As the evening wore on, the manager, Joel, passed by Shaq, offering a respectful nod. He had adapted too, working diligently to meet the new standards. "Joel," Shaq said, stopping him, "the hotel's booked solid next month. Looks like business is booming. Good work ensuring everything runs smoothly." Joel smiled, relief and pride mingling. "Thank you, sir. It's thanks to your vision. The team's embraced it." Shaq sighed contentedly. The Royal Beacon Hotel was thriving, not by excluding people but by welcoming everyone. Profits rose, but more importantly, so did the staff's morale and guest satisfaction. The old reputation of elitist snobbery faded, replaced by a welcoming atmosphere. A few nights later, as Shaq strolled through the lobby, he spotted an older black couple checking in. They wore plain clothes, weary from travel. He watched as a newly hired receptionist greeted them warmly and handed them room keys without hesitation. The couple seemed pleasantly surprised. Shaq smiled to himself. This, right here, justified his actions, a small victory in the broader fight for equality and respect. Before leaving the hotel that night, Shaq took a seat in the lounge, sipping mineral water. He recalled the first night he came in, how he was turned away. He'd felt a sting of disappointment then. Now that memory felt distant, overshadowed by what he'd built. A place where his legacy wasn't just about basketball or business, but about doing what's right. The next morning, a card arrived for Shaq at the front desk, handed in by a guest who chose to remain anonymous. It read, "Thank you for making this a place where I feel welcome. It means more than you know." Shaq held the card, heartwarming. He didn't need a headline or a press conference. This quiet acknowledgement was enough to assure him he'd made the correct decision. Walking through the lobby one last time before heading out for meetings, he greeted staff by name, inquiring about their day. Maria, a housekeeper, mentioned how guests complimented the friendly atmosphere. Tom, the bellhop, said he felt proud to work here now. These simple words affirmed the transformation. Shaq exited onto the street, morning light glinting off the doors. The Royal Beacon stood behind him, changed for the better. He had turned a personal slight into a catalyst for reform, a racist rejection into a story of inclusion and growth. He understood that true power wasn't just about wealth or fame, but about using one's influence to uplift others and broaden horizons. As he disappeared into the city's bustle, the Royal Beacon Hotel continued to glow, a testament that people can learn, environments can change, and justice, when served quietly and firmly, can create lasting impact.